All right, go ahead and go to the columns section. We're going to start the next section on column charts. And this is some actual data that I gathered from the cancer.org site about different types of cancers. I randomly picked different states from different parts of the country. So we've got East, South, Midwest, Northwest, and Northwest. And we're just going to compare what the cancer rates are for new cases of cancers in 2012. So we're going to highlight this information. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. I'm not going to use this to begin with. I'm just going to do, because this is kind of extra. Right now I have all the names of the, let me widen that, sorry. I have all the names of the states, okay? If it really bothers that you can't see this, you can wrap the text. It doesn't matter as far as how your graph's going to look, but sometimes it's nice to be able to read it. So I'm going to highlight this information. I've got the names of each cancer, I've got the states, and I've got the numbers. So I'm going to go to Insert, Column, and we'll just do a regular 2D column. So that comes out just great, shows every state, okay? But when looking at this, you might just be a little overwhelmed because there's so many states and it's just random. You really do want the East, Midwest stuff because then you kind of understand why those particular states were chosen. And that's why you can actually segregate it with another level. So I went in and added this. And now when I make the graph, I highlight the same thing, only I add the side, okay? It actually segregates the data for me. So now I've got East together, South, Midwest, Northwest, and Northwest all together. So it took a little bit of practice to make it come out the way I wanted. And that's sometimes one of the issues with Excel. I'm doing all the hard work for you, which is getting all the data typed up in the right way. We'll have later assignments where you have to figure that out. But that is one of the challenges, knowing how to enter it in to make it appear the right way. Please pause the video now and complete the instructions just given. I still find this graph a little overwhelming, so because there's still a lot to show. And it's fine. I mean, it will still work. In fact, we probably ought to add our title. In the assignment, it tells you to do chart 3, okay? And the title is New Cases of Cancers by State and Region. And then I want it to be 2012. So I'm going to go ahead and make this font a little bit smaller so it fits on one page, and then I'm going to make, or on one line, and then I'm going to make that smaller. But again, it's still a little overwhelming. It might be a little difficult to read. So, and that might be fine. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it, but there is something we can do to maybe make it a little simpler. So I'm going to go to Chart Tools, and I'm going to go to Change Chart Type. And instead of doing this type, I'm going to do a stacked column. So what that does is it stacks it. So now there's only one column for Georgia, but you can see quite easily that breast cancer is their biggest problem in Georgia. You know, you can still tell which one has the highest numbers, okay? And you can also tell that Iowa has less skin cancer than Ohio. So you can still get the same information from it, but it's not quite as overwhelming. So that's another thing that you can do with that. We're going to go ahead and move it. Oh, we have one last thing. We're going to do plot. The plot area. I honestly don't do this very much when I make graphs, but it's good to know. I'm going to right click and go to Format Plot Area, and then I'm going to go to Fill, and I can fill it with a color if I want to. I can do a gradient, and I think in the assignment I ask you to do a gradient. If you're lazy, you can just pick one of these gradients, though I find that incredibly obnoxious. So I would probably stick with something really, really simple. I'm going to get rid of all this and make this white. If you haven't used Excel or PowerPoint before, this might confuse you a little bit. So I'm kind of doing a lot of stuff so you can watch and see how it works. So see, there's no contrast. So you kind of want to make sure you pick something that you can still see what's going on. But sometimes that can make your graph a little bit more interesting to look at. So I'm going to move that chart over onto our graphs. We're building up quite a supply of them now. And I'm going to move this over to the second page. At the very end, we're going to make all this fit on one page. So don't stress too much about it. You know, if you want to make them big enough to fit the whole page, you can. You know, later on, we're going to fix that. Please pause the video now and complete the instructions just given. So that is how you do your column chart. One thing I want to point out while I have this page open here is that column and bar charts are pretty much interchangeable. I could go in here and change the chart type to a column, and it would probably still be a great chart. So for the most part, it can go either way, but I found that when I was writing this assignment, originally I was going to have this be the column chart, But I found that it looked much better as a bar chart, because when you put it as a column, it just shrinks them so much. I'd have to make it so tall that it would just be really awkward. So I found this made just a better bar chart. And now for our line chart section. Line charts are characterized by the fact that they usually show changes over time. So if it's ever something about time, it's showing months or years. A lot of times line charts are going to be the best option. So here we have some stock prices from 2011 to 2013 for 4 different companies. I picked companies I felt you would probably relate to and know. So to start this assignment, you actually need to go get today's stock scores. And you're going to enter them here. And that's just a good thing to know how to do anyway. So I'm going to go into Google. And this is the name of the company. This is the code. So all I have to do is type in the code. And it will tell me the score right there. Okay, so for today, 331.68. Okay, so I went ahead and did all that. Just know that when you type in for Costco, because it's called cost, it might be confused on the search. So you might have to type in cost space stock, and then it will come up easily. So these are the things for today. Your numbers here are going to be quite different depending on how much later it is that you do this. You may have to change the year or whatever. It might be quite interesting to see how much it's gone up or gone down since August of 2013. So now we need to decide what we're going to highlight. You'll notice we've got one column that says company, one column that says code. Let's highlight the whole thing and see how that goes. I do an insert line, and I usually pick the first one. Sometimes you get weird results when you pick something else. But now you'll notice over here it says Netflix. It shows the name twice, okay? And that's because I've given it 2 names. So I don't think that that's really needed. I'm going to highlight just this section instead out. The name's really just in there so that you know what the code means as a student. So now I have my graph. I can see that Apple has much higher prices, and then they had a huge surge in April of 2012, and it might be interesting to look up the history of the company. There might have been a new, iPhone came out around that time or something that made it go up. With Netflix has always got really interesting stock because they go down and up quite a lot. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. This one, they've had a lot of ups and downs. This is when they went to no streaming, and so their stock dropped really fast. Once I have that, I need to add my chart layout. And in this assignment, I've asked you to choose chart layout 1. Change the title to changes in stock. Press enter and do 4 selected companies. And I like to have my subtitles smaller because that's what they are, a subtitle. And then notice it says Axis title over here. You really don't want to leave something like that. Either get rid of it entirely by highlighting it and pressing delete, or make sure it says something. And I would make sure it says something, because what do these numbers mean? You want to always think about the person looking at your graph and assume they know nothing about what you're talking about. Can they figure out what you're trying to say by looking at the graph? So I'm just going to put stock price here. And then we can go ahead, and move that to our graphs page. Please pause the video now and complete the instructions just given. And if you ever want to go in and change the colors and stuff like I showed you on the previous graph, if you want your lines to be different colors, you're welcome to add that element. That's not a problem. Okay, we're now going to do the last graph in this assignment, which is a composite graph. What that means is we're combining 2 different types of charts, and the 2 that you see mostly is combining a column chart with a line chart. So what you have to do is you start out with one or the other. I always start with a column chart. And in this graph, we are comparing the spending per pupil in these selected states versus the graduation rate. And a lot of times with graphs, they should be answering a question. The reason you're making the graph is to answer a question or to demonstrate a thought. And in this, I want to see, is it really helping to spend more money on students? Is it making more of them graduate? And so you see there's some states that spend quite a bit, and then there's Utah, which is the state I'm from, that doesn't spend very much at all. And so it's kind of interesting to see if that's really going to affect graduation rate. So we're going to highlight this information, include your titles. We're going to go to Insert and do a column chart. Do a 2D column chart. That's important when you're doing a combined chart. And you'll notice that when this chart comes out, it's got a serious issue. Our spending per pupil is easy to see, but our graduation rate is impossible to see. That's because we're comparing money to percentages. They're apples and oranges, two different things. And so we have to create a new axis to show our graduation rate. So what we're going to do is click on the word graduation rate and then click on it again. So now only graduation rate is highlighted. I'm going to right click and go to Format Data Series and choose Secondary Axis, which puts a nice axis along the side, but it still looks like a really weird graph. So you'll notice all the red ones are still highlighted, but you can't see the blue behind it. So we're going to go over here to change chart type with the red still highlighted and choose a line chart. And now it's very clear that you've got states like New York that have a high spending, but they're basically getting what they're paying for. They're getting a high graduation rate. But then you've got Washington, D.C. that's spending almost as much and not getting that graduation rate. So obviously there's some other things at play. You've got Utah that doesn't spend very much at all and has a higher graduation rate, or actually the same graduation rate as New York. And yes, you can know that by looking at the numbers, but a graph just draws it out for you. It's very nice. So we're going to go ahead and add chart layout 1 to this. And we want to do spending per pupil versus graduation rate. Again, I like it to fit on one line. Please pause the video now and complete the instructions just given. And then this one also has the same problem that our cat dog one did. It only goes up to 80%, so it looks like their graduation rate is super high, but really that's 70%. We want this to be out of 100, so I'm going to click on this, right-click, Format Access, and I'm going to change the max to 1 again. And now it shows a little bit more accurately what the graduation rate is. If you want to change the color scheme, you can do that, or pick one of the styles that that they provide, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to go ahead and move this over to my graphs section. Except I don't know where it went. There it is. Please pause the video now and complete the instructions just given. Now you want to make sure that it fits on 2 pages and not more than that. You can see now you can see why I had you keep it in that format so that you can see the edges of your paper. Okay, now once I have that, I've got all of them on 2 different pages, and you can tell because the others are all grayed out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to print this, but I really don't want it to print on 2 pages. Oh, now why did it do that? It's showing just one graph. I'm glad I made that mistake so I can show you, because you'll probably make the same mistake. It's just showing one graph. Really don't want you to print that because it doesn't tell us anything. So that's because I still have that particular graph highlighted. So I'm going to click off of it and then go to File, Print. Okay, and now I can actually see my full page, both of them. Okay, and you may want to rearrange yours. Honestly, I really don't like how you can't see this very well. I'd probably rearrange it, where they are. So, and yes, I noticed there's a 3 there. I know it's probably been bothering all of you this entire time, but I'm not fixing it now. So this is on 2 page. And I really want it to be on 1, so I'm going to go over here to no scaling and change it to fit on 1 page. And it's amazing how beautifully it makes the whole thing fit on 1 page, and I can go ahead and print that. So I hope that this has been enlightening for you to learn about the different types of graph, and good luck with your assignment.